5, 4, 3, 2, 1. There we go. There we go. All right, ladies and gentlemen, what's crack-a-lackin'? What's going on? You have joined number 18, episode number 18 of the Mosby Learning Podcast. This is, well, I'll tell you what, this one's not live, but who knows what the future brings for us. Yes. We just did a little trial balloon there of some interesting technology, which maybe we'll kind of dig into in a future date, but we don't dig by ourselves here. My name is Dan Hirt, and I'm calling in from Mississauga, Ontario.
My name is Adam Costakes, and calling from Dallas-Fort Worth.
Cynthia Gibbs from Texas.
From Texas. Just Texas this time. Nothing fancy. There's no stars. All right.
There's a lone star.
There's just the one, really. It's the saddest star. One's the loneliest number, is what I've heard. All right, ladies and gentlemen, you can find the show notes for this show, mosby.ca/018. And what you're going to find is a handful of interesting articles, I think, that all have to do with training. Some of them, it's interesting. Some of them have to do with, man, all sorts of stuff. We've got fast food going on today. We got well, kind of elementary education, but I think there's actually a spin into the training room as opposed to the classroom. We also have something else coming up for, what else was that other thing? That was for, physical restraints. We got some interesting articles today. We also have, I think there's a really, an interesting Can Training Fix It. This is a situation that's happened to this woman 3 times in a row. She can't seem to get this figured out. We're going to see if we can help her a little bit later on. And then we're also going to talk about how long it takes to make anything. I'll tell you what, it takes a while to make a podcast, but we're going to give this our best shot. And now it had been a while since we had heard from our friends on the West Coast here, but I received an inter-office envelope the other day.
Uh-oh.
And yeah,
those still happen? I didn't know we had those.
Well, I don't want to say it's after you came back we got another one, but
You done messed up, Aaron!
we did in fact get We got a note from Portland here, and it's interesting. So it's a there's a couple things going on here. There's a request for clarification. There's a couple things going on here. There's a request for clarification. There is a correction, and there's also a privilege check that we have from Portland. So here's kind of how the message.
Mail. I had to. There's a lot in there.
Well, it's a thick envelope. You know how they are with the dots and the strings and stuff. All right, so here's how the message kind of starts to me here. It says, please review co-host comments below and request clarification from the individual before the office processes any sort of apology order. So, and here's the note here. It says so Adam K, this is to you. Now, it's interesting. Yeah, see, that's what I thought. That's interesting because... I don't know. They just they don't know how to spell Costakes. Well, there is a K in Costakes, though.
Yeah, well, it's kind of in the middle.
Yeah. Well, anyways, I don't know how they do things over there.
They spell differently.
Okay, so what I have to do is I got to ask you why you're in the food service industry.
And that's how we're going to start the episode off.
Yeah.
And, for everybody listening, that was from a previous news article about reskilling Thai workers.
Everybody that listened to this article or this podcast has listened to the previous episode
I'm
17.
Sure they do. So they know. Just kind of teasing
they
back
know
to
there was an article that had to do with Thai workers that were working in South Korea that were basically they were beyond their visitor visas, and so they weren't even visiting; they were working. And South Korea said you got to get out. So, did you have any thoughts on that?
I really didn't. I have no experience in that at all, and I wouldn't even know where to go. I think I was just using the wrong words there. So, yeah, don't really have much else to say about that subject at all.
I have. No, that's good. I've submitted your response. Thank you very much.
Say about that subject at all.
I have... No, that's good. I've submitted your response. Thank you very much. Cynthia, now it actually looks like you've got an exemption here for some reason. Doesn't say why, but something you were not exempt from was your sarcastic suggestion that our world's actors are not role models. And on that note, we would like to apologize from the Mosby Learning Podcast to the Screen Actors Guild for that particular misstep. SAG members are the faces and voices that entertain and inform America and the world, and their contributions should not be trivialized. Now, lastly, in the check your privilege category, and this is as it's written here, it says, you will no longer complain about your lack of grocery baggers in your rural utopian grocery stores. We had a number of people complain who live in a bag yourself state and province that said, like, you sounded like elitist.
Do you have baggers where you live in Canada?
Let me think about
Actually,
this.
do you guys even have bags? I could see you guys getting completely away
Do we
from
have
bags.
bags? Do we have bags, dude? What do you think our milk comes in up here? Yeah, milk comes in bags over here. You didn't know?
Oh,
people
really?
don't know that.
Wait, what?
Yeah,
No,
yeah.
like an actual soft bag.
Yeah, it's interesting because you get a pack of 3 and they're liters. So you guys deal more with quarts and liters. I think they're like 5 milliliters different or something like that.
That whole
But,
metric system's complicated.
it's actually the simplest thing in the goddamn world. But it's a base of 10. So if you look at your fingers, that's how many like a unit is. It's 10. But anyhow, yeah, it comes in a bag. And so there's actually a whole industry in Canada of jugs to slip the bag into and little cutters to cut the little thing, the little corner tip off of the bag of milk.
So there's a whole bunch of states in the United States getting rid of you put your milk in bags. That just
We
seems
lean into bags here.
Yeah,
You got to lean in. It's a Sheryl Sandberg sort of situation up here when it comes to bags.
that's amazing.
And I think I
Plastic
saw-
it's got to be bad for you too, right? Doesn't plastic leach into
Plastic?
The milk? Yeah, it leaches,
What-
right?
You don't have any food that comes in plastic wrappers, like microwave burritos or anything?
No, we're saving the environment down here.
There you go. Well, that's good. Speaking of California, we're going to talk about them in a few minutes, but we'll get there soon. We've got a couple articles to touch on before that, and as they're listed here in the show notes, which I am confident today we have all reviewed, there's one here, and Adam, you put this on the list here. Fast food manager reprimanded for sending worker home for wearing a hijab. Now, just on a personal note, I actually lived about 7 minutes away from where this restaurant is. Personal note, I actually lived about 7 minutes away from where this restaurant is in Saginaw, Texas.
Really?
Because I used to live in North Fort Worth there, and it was right around the corner. Saginaw, interesting area. There are these just massive silos. You guys ever been through there?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Yeah, they got those. I don't know what if they're grain or corn or what the hell they are, or maybe they're cattle silos. I don't know if there's
I think
cattle
they're water.
silos, but
No?
they don't look like water. No, they're concrete, I think. But anyways, just these things that are on the horizon, and because it's Texas, you can just see forever. But yeah, really, really wild there. So why don't you walk us through this one, man?
Yeah,
Because I've got some questions. I've got some comments here.
So pretty much it was an employee who, a lady came into Chicken Express. She was getting some food, and then the employee basically said, you employee, and she said, you need to remove
Did you read the article?
I did, and I was going down to the training part. So, and then
okay, jump to the training part then.
Yes.
We'll talk about that.
Okay, we'll go down there. But there was an apology made for the mistake. Basically, they said take off your hijab or go home. And the person's like, well, I'm not taking it off. I'm Muslim. I'm not going to do that. I thought it was really interesting from a training perspective. Chicken Express franchisee is addressing the issue through additional training, and the person who was told to take off the hijab has been asked to participate in developing the training so that a mistake like this will not happen again. And then it ends with a comment here of the manager has been reprimanded for his decision, and he will receive further training on how to properly handle similar situations in the future.
Well, what kind of training was he given in the beginning at all?
Yeah. Begs that question, doesn't it?
Was he given in the beginning at all?
Yeah.
Begs that question, doesn't it? Well, there's a couple other questions that I think are relevant that are towards the front of the article that a Control F search for the word training won't take you to. What did we have here? So this was... This was so the manager, it was a male manager that gave her the choice of take it off or go home. But she posted a thing to social media after the initial ultimatum, I guess, was given to her. It's listed here as it was an ultimatum. I'm sure it sounds like it. But she says she was told to take off her hijab or go home. And then we have a quote here. He called me into the office and he's like, and then an additional quote, I talked to the area coach and she said that you're not allowed to wear it because it's not part of the uniform policy. So he actually got his orders from above. So I find this particular fellow is in a bit of a rock and a hard place situation. Because we've got somebody that's like a regional sort of individual that says, no, can't do it, not part of the uniform policy, which seems kind of short-sighted, I guess.
But he supported it too, though, and he was like, okay, then we're just gonna have to send you home. So he supported what the person said.
Sure. I'm not saying that.
It sounded to me like so was it her direct manager? From the article, what I saw, it was the manager's manager who told him he had to say that to her.
Yes, that's correct, Gibbs.
And so who's the one getting the training and who's the one who got in trouble? The manager's manager or the manager?
The big manager's a lady, the store manager's a man, and then the employee is a lady or a young woman, I think. And so the man, it says that she'd converted to Islam several months ago. So I don't know if this was like her first shift back after her conversion. I don't know how this works.
Yeah,
I'm not going to pretend to know.
I'm not really sure either, but I know this is not a Can Training Fix This article, but do you think training is going to solve this issue for the manager? Or do you think this is an awareness item, or is it even a training item? Is it just don't tell your employees to take things off? Or is it more of one of those things where you need to go into the handbook and say what is acceptable and it be more inclusionary? Go ahead, Gibbs.
Well, and I guess my question is
Cynthia, hang on. Cynthia's busy texting me for some reason. What are you doing, man?
Because I don't want to.
We're doing a show.
Because I don't want to say it out loud.
Oh boy. I guess we get another letter from Portland next week.
So I'm not saying anything. So I guess here's my thought. So there have been several different types of popular stores, not just this one, where diversity training or inclusion training has happened. And
Starbucks.
The same, no, not necessarily, but then the same situation happens again, maybe with a different religion, maybe with a different career choice kind of things. And then they're like, well, I'll give them diversity training. And there's a couple companies that like, okay, we'll give more diversity and inclusion training. And, so I don't know if training can fix it.
I think this is actually kind of a policy issue, and it's so easy to say, why don't just like religious garments accepted?
Bingo.
Like,
done.
How is that not the easiest 7 words?
And honestly, if it's not going from a policy standpoint too, if it's not going to affect her safety or other people's safety from wearing it, what's the big deal?
Well, what's the big deal? But I do see, from private companies though, if you have a look, right, like you don't want a bunch of guys with face tattoos. I mean, it's a choice of your employee. If they come in with a face tattoo and they're serving the public, and I'm a franchisee owner, I don't probably want a face tattoo on you. It's probably not a good look. And I apologize to everybody with face tattoos.
But okay, but here's the I think the difference though too is she just started wearing it. If they hired a person
recently,
and the guy goes and gets it, then I don't know.
The face tattoo, you mean?
Yeah.
Everything's got to start sometime, I guess. Yeah. Yeah, I don't know.
I just thought it was an interesting thing to throw training as the solution. And, it's one of those ones where it's like, okay, well, they need to be trained more, But is that manager really learning anything? He got reprimanded. He got in
But
trouble.
isn't that always the solution? And that's a problem we have is being in learning development is everyone's like, well, just train them. Just give them training. Let's just train them.
I think I can partially help you answer that, because who would be interested on providing training like that? Probably some sort of consultant that specializes.
Solution, and that's a problem we have is being in learning development is everyone's like, well, just train them. Just give them training. Let's just train them.
I think I can partially help you answer that, because who would be interested on providing training like that? Probably some sort of consultant that specializes in identifying these sort of problems. So there is an inherent conflict of interest for people that provide the solution that they feel very strongly about and identify. And I'm not specifically just targeting out this sort of circumstance, but I mean, if you say, hey man, oh, green doors, man, no, that's bad. You know what? I got a door painting company. Like, well, okay, whatever, man. Should we all just agree to move on here?
Sure.
Would we all be more comfortable if we moved on?
Let's move on, and then we won't have to text behind the scenes, so that'll be good too.
You know what's interesting is, Gibbs, when we were running retail university there, I would try to send Gibbs messages subtly through instant message to be like, hey, maybe you know this or that, and she's like, Dan, what are you talking about on here? Just blasting it out over the webinar.
She has a habit of calling people out. I think she called me out in an interview today, and I'm like, "Oh, wonderful! Good. Yeah, it was great."
Do we want to review that?
I don't remember the whole thing, but I got called out in an interview.
It was about being honest. Like,
so
he's like, well, let me be honest for once. I was like,
Oh, Jesus Christ.
I said that like 45 minutes into the interview. We had a great candidate. She was fantastic. And then I used the filler words of, so let me be honest for once. And I started talking, and Gibbs like, so you've been lying this whole time?
The whole time. Nice job, man.
I was like, yeah, fantastic.
Certain filler words are no bueno.
No bueno.
All right, so the next thing that we're going to... So, you know what? I should have sourced that first one. And the show notes, again, if you go to mosby.ca/018, you'll find the show notes for this. And that first article was from nbcdfw.com/news. So we'll give the link for that. This link is from ProPublica. I'm assuming it's ProPublica. Inside a training course where school workers learn how to physically restrain students. Now, what did you like about this? What caught your eye? What are we talking about here?
Well, it caught my eye because all the school workers were having to go through this training to say, here's how you restrain kids.
Was it all the school workers?
I don't know if it was all the school workers, but there was many.
I don't believe it was, because there's a comment later on about implying that certain people use force, not all of them. So again, I have to ask: did you read the article, Adam?
I did.
Okay, all right.
I did.
Okay, all right. I just want to be sure.
And it did. Let's clarify too, though, that the article said they were training this only for major emergencies, like extreme.
I missed that one.
Yeah,
I know. Yeah, it wasn't. This wasn't like softball sort of stuff. This was fairly serious.
Extreme situations was the only time you should do that.
Like when somebody's eating Doritos. No, because that's pretty extreme from what I understand. All right. Walk us through this article as we just quietly berate you.
Exactly. I was like, oh, here we go. After the training, they were talking about are they going to actually apply the training in their job? And so what they did is they started analyzing and saying they analyzed 50,000 incident reports to write the project, and it was, did the workers actually do what they had been taught?
Board looking into this. It's the ProPublica organization in Chicago, Illinois, looking into this for the Chicago suburb area, I think.
Well, correct. No, they actually went. It was an investigative report where they actually went and took the class with teachers.
Yes. Yeah. Well, I'm saying the review of the 50,000 records was part of their journalistic situation.
Part of the journalistic part, yeah, absolutely. But what they were basically saying is that the training said that physical restraint should only be used in a safety emergency. So then they went through all these records and said, in the training, it tells you to do this. And in the investigative reporting, you're correct, Dan, they basically documented thousands of times when school employees restrained children for lots of inappropriate reasons. And that was basically the gist of it, is that everybody went through this training, was supposed to solve it, is supposed to tell the people restraining people exactly when to use that force, and they were doing it wrong.
Because they were doing it in all types of situations.
Correct.
Yeah, when they were more angry than anything. Well, I shouldn't say that. It does. There's no qualitative measure to it, but it sounds like, they weren't following the book, and they were doing it when they were also emotionally charged in some instances, and that's specifically when they're not supposed to do it. Mm-hmm. There's a couple of things that I thought were interesting. The fact that the journalist, who is Jennifer Smith Richards from the Chicago Tribune, that she took the training. So she I mean, that's certainly part of research, but that's almost becoming like a subject matter expert in some fraction. Right. So that's I think that's admirable to take journalism to that extent, because how often is journalism just a piece of shit opinion article anymore? That's basically all they are, and then there's reactions to various piece of shit opinion articles like that makes up 80% of news, just those two stupid things right there. Whereas this is somebody that's actually going the extra mile, becoming a subject matter expert, and finding a legit problem, a legit gap in the actions of the employees.
Yeah. And quite frankly, I was looking at it, and I was, when I was skimming the bottom part, the end of the article, it was talking about like holding down the arms and legs of how the person being restrained was not giving in resistance, but in the training they were still holding them down, and their kids, and so they were, that physical restraint was not really probably a good thing, especially when it's used out of context.
Yeah. No, I think you might have got something backwards there. It sounded like you said that in the training they were doing it extra. They were holding them down when it wasn't appropriate.
Yeah. When the trainees were holding down arms and legs, even when the person being restrained offered no resistance. That's how the training was.
So in a real life scenario,
they were doing it in the training.
I missed that. I missed that part of the article.
When the trainees were holding down arms and legs, even when the person being restrained offered no resistance. That's how the training was.
So in a real life scenario,
they were doing it in the training.
I missed that. I missed that part of the article.
Mm-hmm.
Where did you find that part?
At the very bottom.
Prove that I did this wrong.
I'll read it exactly to you. I thought back to those moments on the mats.
It's a difficult article.
When the trainees were
There's
holding...
way more words than I'm used to.
Oh my goodness. Gosh.
The pictures.
All right. Yeah, there's not a lot of pictures.
Although there were illustrations, that was kind of nice.
Maybe the training wasn't working, and maybe the article's not working, but she was thinking back to the moments on the mats when the trainees were holding down arms and legs, and how even when the person being restrained offered no resistance, the act felt so visceral and so invasive.
Oh, well, that's just because that the person that's doing the role play, that they're not fighting back.
Right, but
I think she's just making like a judgment call on even the trainees were screwing up. I think she's just saying that it felt weird because you're restraining somebody when they're not providing a resistance.
Yes.
Confused.
Well, that makes three of us.
I'm like, what was the adjective?
Wow. and our fourth listener there.
Where did this went way off base?
Well, what's interesting is it's actually a really nice segue from there to the article that you kind of brought to the table today, Gibbs, because that article that we just barely stumbled through was that was about restraining students that are really, really lashing out. And the next article that we have is again talking about students. So I kind of like to tie that ProPublica one into, becoming a SME, and then there's the actual role play piece. So there's legit connections to it. Now this one, I think, full defiance of students. So why don't you, Cynthia, walk us through it?
Yeah. So I actually saw this from a couple of during the holidays on Facebook, where where in California, as of January 1st, I guess they voted on some new laws. They voted on state school laws, just like they voted not to have bags anymore in California and to charge you 25 cents if you asked for a bag.
I heard that's one of the reasons that they have poop on every single corner.
So what they voted for was that kids in 1st through 5th grade cannot be suspended for willfully defying teachers or administrators. And part of their reason, because they're saying it says supporters say suspensions for willful defiance are disproportionately used against students of color. So that's one. And then they changed school times, which part of me wasn't really, whatever. But the whole, I just thought when I saw it the first time, because I was a school teacher for about 2 or 3 years. And
I didn't know that. Yeah. Did I know that?
Yeah. And so
what grades did you teach?
5th grade. 5th grade.
Did you learn about restraining kids? Did you go through any classes on restraints?
I'll be honest with you, because I left corporate world, right, and went and got my master's in education and was a school teacher. And one of the reasons I left, was because the teachers really had a lot of control over that disciplinary stuff. And
can I ask you what state you were in when you were doing this? Okay.
But I just think it's interesting because you see this article that totally fell apart that Adam sent, where teachers are learning how to restrain kids, obviously in emergency situations. And then you have California saying, you can't suspend students for willfully defying teachers or administrators. Now, I don't know how they're defining willfully defying. Just like how are they defining with the restraining, when do you really have to restrain? What are those emergency situations? I'm assuming they do, but and so it's just one complete opposite spectrums, I kind of feel like.
I wonder if it's like a truth to power situation. Whenever we have a truth to power, it's a great question. When is that the actual set of circumstances that the sources say, or supporters of the bill say that it's disproportionately used against students of color? Now that doesn't come up in that particular article. Well, it comes up only in that sentence. There's no sourcing to that. There's no who those supporters happen to be. So that's kind of thin, but.
Yeah, and this is a short article. I mean, I'm sure the laws are written, but it's so generic.
So here's kind of what I was thinking. Here's the approach for me. A classroom, turn that into the training room now. So the way that they word this, or the way that the laws are set up, is that right now, for grade one, like a grade 1 kid who's willfully defiant, and I don't know, name me a 6-year-old that's not willfully defiant and a complete pain in the ass. You know what I mean? Like, it's just like kids are kids. But so you've got grades.
That's too. Usually grades 1 through 5 is when if they're actually maybe have certain disabilities or special needs,
like a learning disability or something.
Yeah. And so and so sometimes they're willfully defiant because they have some kind of disability or some kind of perhaps ADD, and they've never been diagnosed with it or things like that. So so I get it from that sense, but then at the same time, kids can be kids.
Oh, yeah. Well, I think all the time kids are going to be kids. Now, if you let those kids for 5 years, I don't want to say run amok, but have control over the classroom, ultimately, I suppose they could still be disciplined in some way, but they can't be suspended. That seems to be what the legislation says. But so you give them 5 years where they don't have any serious consequences against willful defiance against their authority figures in the classroom. And then what they did is, I think 5 years, what the legislation says. But so you give them 5 years where they don't have any serious consequences against willful defiance against their authority figures in the classroom. And then what they did is, I think 5 years down the line, they extend it to grades 6 through 8. So now you have kids that have gone through 8 years of schooling, through very formative years, not giving a about what their teacher at the front of the room says. And here's the thing. 6 years later, they are going to be in our new hire orientation classes. what is that going to look like? So that's the part that I have to wonder about is what happens when we have somebody that has been through, and I'm not encouraged, but they haven't been as discouraged as they could have against, ridiculous behavior, willful defiance. What else would you call willful? A little more dramatic, but not far from the mark that are like...
Well, and I don't know, because sometimes the things you see that, on YouTube or wherever sometimes, where is willfully defiant, they're physically harming the teacher, or,
I don't know.
That's willfully,
well, you can be damn sure they're going to have a camera in the teacher's face.
Or is it when they're just yelling at the teacher and maybe cussing them out?
Yeah, probably.
And so they're not going to get suspended. So
how does a world without authority accomplish anything?
Well, and I guess then if they're not suspended, is there any punishment?
And then
detention, maybe?
Well, and then where does the punishment stop, right? So if I'm not mistaken, in Texas, they still allow corporal punishment in schools. Is that correct?
Mm-mm.
I don't think so, man.
I thought they did.
Let's say this too. It's really sometimes it depends on.
I'm pretty
the
sure
school
they do.
District. Well, and it depends on from what I know of it. Based on kind of your school. I taught at a Title I school, and it's a little different than this school.
What's that mean, Title I?
Title I is tends to be labeled as 80% of the children get free lunches because it's in a poor area of wherever city you're working in. And that's typically across the country is what a Title I is. And then you go to a school that's maybe 6 miles away and not a Title I school. It's a little different, know?
So
a little different because, a lot of the Title I schools, unfortunately, they don't really have parent figures in a lot of senses.
So Texas is among 15 states that specifically allow the use of corporal punishment. 8 other states have no laws or regulations against it.
But they don't.
And Texas has the second largest number of school spankings in the United States.
Wow, who's first?
I don't know. I was just going to kind of find that out. Ranked second to Mississippi in paddling.
Yeah,
the data,
that makes sense.
Wow, this is actually pretty interesting. The data from school year 2015 to 2016 shows a drop of 8%, but there was still about 4,000 schools that continue to keep spanking.
Where are these
suggesting? Are you suggesting we bring spanking into the training room? Is that what you're saying?
No.
I thought that's
a whole
it's
HR
just,
issue.
It's fascinating because
this is what I'm hearing.
Yeah, the district with the most incidences in Texas is an elementary school in city charters. There's a bunch of Dallas
Saginaw,
charters,
I'll tell you that.
Nova Academies campuses, Beaumont. And so it is actually fairly prevalent. And the reason I bring it up, I remember when we moved here, Jessica and my wife, we were kind of talking about that. We're like, what? Like, wow. Like, I thought that went out in the 80s when I was a student. Now, I never got paddled, but I remember the threat of it at school that the principal could paddle you. I remember that back in the day in Michigan. So
I don't think I ever got smacked at school, but I most definitely got smacked around at home if I was being a pain in the ass. So, I mean, I minded my P's and Q's when I was at school, so it wasn't really an issue that I recall.
Never did it, but yeah, I mean, we should
probably
bring paddling into the school or into the workplace.
Yeah.
HR issue.
It'll be like
no
Dazed
touching.
and Confused in there, man.
Exactly, with the paddles
Trainers
going around.
It'll be like
No
Dazed and
touching.
Confused in there, man.
Exactly, with the paddles
Trainers
going around.
bringing their own paddles in, getting people to sign them. You guys are sick. All right, was there anything else that you wanted to talk to on that article, Gibbs? No, all right. So we're going to move on then to something that may, this is, okay, there's always questions about when is training the most appropriate thing. And I'm hoping I'm hoping that we can get there with this. Maybe it is, maybe I don't know. But so here's the article. It's the headline. There's actually a lot of information in the headline. Woman says she was trapped for days in a clothing donation bin. It's the third time she's been rescued, cops say. So this woman, this is not the first time this has happened. A 38-year-old woman may have spent days trapped inside a clothing donation bin in Paterson, New Jersey, before she was rescued by firefighters on Monday's authorities. But she said she was in there since Friday. Police Director Jerry Spazel? How would you say that? Spazel?
Jerry S.
I wouldn't say it that way. Said Tuesday morning, the woman told police she was reaching inside the bin behind an apartment building on Broadway when somebody pushed her from behind. Good God. Now, okay. If we were to believe, and it's certainly possible, but this is the third time it's happened, so who keeps waiting for this woman to put something in the donation bin to shove her in there? It's so okay.
And then how many times is she going to go back to the donation bin at the same time?
Take a clue. That's right. Send your kid or something.
Maybe she donated clothes and she left her wedding ring in there, so she's searching for it.
And so you think somebody was just trying to help her?
Well, she couldn't find it the first time and she had to go to a meeting.
Oof, I don't know,
she went back in.
I'm
trying to get the first time and she had to go to a meeting.
Oof, I don't know,
she went back in. I'm trying to give her the benefit of the doubt.
See, I'm going the opposite way.
Awful good, yeah.
I was going really the opposite way, that she keeps getting stuck in there because she's like a dumb criminal, and she wants to keep getting the donated clothes, right? Like, people have a bunch of clothes in there, it's donated, like, it's probably pretty easy access. Although she tries to go in and she gets stuck. It's kind of like flypaper.
Good Lord. So the article continues. Once a person is inside the bin, it's nearly impossible to get out due to the configuration of the sliding door on the box. Spazel? You said Spazel, right?
Yeah.
Spazel.
Yeah, it doesn't sound right.
Said. Spazel. Roed. A person passing the donation box about 11:30 a.m. on Monday heard the woman crying for help inside and called 911, Spazel said. Okay, we get it. The guy keeps saying these things. Oh my God, that's 4 crying for help inside and called 911, Spazel said. Okay, we get it. The guy keeps saying these things. Oh my God, that's 4 sentences in a row that end with Spazel said. All right, I'm done. But is this woman done with donation bin camping? That's the question. So do we think that this is a possible training issue? Well, first off, as we always do with this, is this a problem?
Can't fix stupid.
Yeah. Well, we don't. I mean, she said somebody pushed her.
Maybe she's just really charitable. She's always donating. Maybe it's like a daily thing. And she's got pushed in 3 times.
She's just a really bad thief, and now you're going far to the other side.
Spazel said he got it in. Spazel said.
Cap?
Yeah.
Is it cap or cop?
Cap or cop?
He said
cop.
what?
Cap or cop.
He got what in?
What?
Huh?
Huh? Who's that for? Because you were giving the woman the benefit of the doubt, and then you came back
I went back
with
to my normal evil
you can't
self.
fix stupid. Leopard can't
but
change
like, seriously,
spots,
how do you get stuck in one of these bins, right? Like, how do you get stuck in one of these bins? I've seen them.
It's easy, because if you're leaning really far in and you're short like me, your legs are just kind of hanging there as you're trying to grab stuff.
So I guess the question is, why does somebody need to lean in these? The ones that I've seen, you pull the handle back, you just like the mailbox. You put the thing in, you put the handle back.
Yeah,
and you put the handle back up in the upright position, and the clothes
don't have as strong back muscles or as tall as the rest of you people.
Oh boy. So we have somebody that's got some sort of atrophied back muscles, and they are, vertically impaired.
Yes.
Hey. I mean, that sounds like somebody's got enough.
Hey,
I mean, that sounds like somebody's got enough going on that they just don't need to worry about donating. They need to get a help out. I don't know. If I had to guess, I feel as though there's some sort of label that could be put on the device
to not lean in. Like, don't put your hand in a wood chipper.
This is a non-lean-in situation. That's right. This is the opposite of milk bags. You don't want to lean into a donation box.
Yeah.
So maybe it's a signage issue. It's not training at all.
I think it's a sign issue. It's kind of like the wood chipper thing, right? Like, don't put your hand in a wood chipper. Like, there's a sign. It says it. I mean, it would be obvious for a lot of people, but there's a sign there for a reason. I'm actually in my garage right now, and I'm looking at a step stool.
Is that like Jeff Foxworthy signs?
Yeah, but like the step stool that I'm looking at, right, that's sitting next to me, it has a sign of a guy standing on the top thing, and it has a big, like, no, don't stand on the top.
I mean, if they ever.
Yeah, there's a lot of bad people. There's spanking, corporal punishment, people dying, horrible articles
one should go
this
into
week.
the memory slot.
Yeah.
I'm like, we just need to start over.
Oh boy, you guys. Well, we're almost near the end. Okay, so we're going to call this a signage issue. Thank you guys for entertaining that idea that this poor woman trapped for the third time, presumably in a row, because what happens in between? So that's a third time in a row in a clothing donation bin for her. So let's move on to the big thing here that we're going to talk about this week. And before we do, let's do a little bit of a reset here. If you wanted to get the show notes for this episode, where would you go? Do you guys know where you go? What do you guys tell me?
Mosby.ca
/18.
Gibbs? 018, very close. I put the 0 in just to be obnoxious, I think.
Yes.
No, it's because I'm optimistic. I'm hoping we have at least 100. Well, really, that gets us up to optimistic. I'm hoping we have at least 100. Well, really, that gets us up to 999 of these. So that is, what is that, the next 45 years? So I'm optimistic in that sense. Yeah, so .ca/018, and I don't know if we gave out the email address yet. Have we gotten an email yet, Adam?
I haven't checked in a while.
Oh, dude. We keep giving the email address out. Why don't you take a quick peek while I tell everybody that it's just email us at mosbylearning@gmail.com, and we already apologize for not getting back to you in a timely manner.
We'll read it live on the air.
Yeah, we would. Well, actually, speaking of live on the air, we were tinkering with some possible.
You would read it live on the air, Adam.
Yeah.
We would. We're tinkering with some possible technology that for an upcoming session we might actually do a live recording. Now these are recorded a little bit later in the evening, so on the West Coast in California they'd be able to hear firsthand what we think of their school legislation. But yeah, so who knows? All right, did you find your way into the mailbag there, the CBS mailbag?
No, there is no mail in there, but there's a lot of things from LinkedIn asking if we know a lot of people. It's kind of interesting here. We have lots of invitations on LinkedIn.
Yeah, obviously we do.
Do we know Bobby Powers? Do we know Juan Carlo Clamaca? There's quite a few other things on here, but no direct Juan Carlo Clamaca.
Nope.
I don't know him either.
Do you know him?
No, but LinkedIn's asking if we do.
Gibbs?
I have 13,000 followers, so maybe.
No, you don't. This is a dubious number.
One invitation.
Maybe.
We have an invitation, though. Hold on.
Until you log into your LinkedIn in front of me and show me that number, it's a dubious number. I'm sorry.
You can look.
No. Then let's move on to the big thing, which is really how much time it takes to develop training material. This is definitely something that I struggle with sometimes to pinpoint a number, because oftentimes a subject changes. The complexity of the subject changes. You know, if I was to create maybe a quick reference guide or just a simple screen recording, well, sometimes they don't take much time at all, sometimes. But then if you need to have a lot of context that goes with it, you need to have complex scenarios. If you're training somebody how to use a piece of military equipment, well, that certainly stretches it out a little bit. So why don't, Adam, you had found a couple good sources to kind of give an idea as far as how much time things do take. Why don't you walk us through a couple of them and maybe why this is on your mind right now? Sure.
Yeah. So I thought it was interesting, and, you know, it continues to come up in projects of, you know, the business wants it now and they want it right away, and they don't really think about the development time that it takes. And so I pulled up two pretty common places that you know, give kind of an idea of what it takes to develop an hour of training. So I wanted to talk to you guys about them of more on the ILT side, right? The e-learning side, that's, I think, a whole different discussion, because there's so many different levels of e-learning, and I think that's constantly changing. Yeah. So I wanted us to focus a little bit on what does it take to create an hour of instructor-led training or an hour of virtual training? And I pulled up 2 studies. One was the ATD study on how long does it take to develop an hour of training. And then the one I pulled up was the 2017 study, which, the time it takes from earlier studies they did, like 2003 average, it's dropped dramatically, right? We have better technology. In 2003, for a traditional training, it was about 45 hours. And 2017, it was about 38 hours. 2003, for a traditional training, it was about 45 hours. And 2017, it was about 38 hours, about a 15% drop. Interestingly enough, virtual training went from 55 hours down to 28, almost a 50% drop in development time. That's over the course of 15 years, but you think about WebEx and GoTo, it's a lot better these days.
But it's still, I was looking at those numbers. It's still a lot of hours.
No, it absolutely is. And that's why I wanted to get an idea from you guys. One of the things that they do take into account, though, in these training numbers is it's all parts of the training. So it's SME reviews, and it takes into account the SME reviews and the SME's time that's reviewing it. So I thought it was a little bit interesting on there. It's a lot of time. And the other number I did want to throw out is the Chapman Alliance content, some repurposing of other material, minimum learning support, 22 hours per 1 hour. So it takes about a week, about a half a week to create 1 hour of training.
Absolutely.
And then they said, complex subject matter, very custom, extended time, 82 hours to 1. And so I kind of wanted to think about, where do you guys see creating an hour of training? And so kind of get an idea.
Yeah, no. So I haven't seen these numbers in a while. But back at Household HSBC, we used to, of course, this is, before e-learning, before we actually had laptops. We used to take this research and these numbers to our business partners and show them it. And that's, how we got more time to build a lot of things, because we would show them the facts. We would show them a lot of things because we would show them the facts. We would show them the numbers and say, look, according to this research, this is how long it's going to take. If you want quality work and if you really want to see impact made on your employees, then this is what it's going to take us to do. And we had, again, going back to, it took time for us to get to the adult table and to build relationships. And that was a time where people stayed at companies for a long time. And of course, that company, as awesome as it was, people stayed. But, it came to the point where our business partners were like, yeah, we know that this is how long it's going to take. We know we want a week's worth of training, so that's 40 hours. Can you give it to us in this amount of time? And so it's kind of funny thing is, and again, it took a while, but we trained them on what it takes for us to give them quality work. Now, proved it with results. And we showed them, see, you gave us this time. Now look how great your team is. And we talked a lot about future, not quick Band-Aids.
Agreed.
I'm done.
That was it.
Good standoff.
Must be learning sign off time. No, I agree. I definitely think it's changing, right? So I think those numbers are changing. And the reason it was hot on my mind is, okay, we're under just immense deadlines, which is great, right? Everybody has to hit different 2020 goals. We're into a new millennium. Is it millennium? Decade? All of the above?
Not yet,
decade,
because according to certain people, the real new decade doesn't start till 2021.
Okay. Well,
I think
it's a
we're
new
still
year,
in the last
right?
year of this decade. I think.
And the
I
business,
don't know.
Businesses are always wanting to do more and do it faster and everything like that. And so it ties into Right for Your Training program that's made by Donald Taylor. And I will put this into show notes also, but I thought it was interesting because in the ATD talk about bringing training time down, right? The virtual instructor led almost went down 50% in the last couple of years. And the just regular ILT went down 15%. I'm almost thinking that training has to go faster. In the article, he talks about, in 2008, just even to produce a car, it took about 60 months from initial design of production. And then by 2013, it dropped to 24 months. And, these older numbers of how fast to create an hour of training, I think are a little bit outdated. And I think the businesses are moving so fast now that we have to move much faster. In this article, he also talks about, in the 60s, companies would stay in talks about, in the 60s, companies would stay where stocks in the U.S. companies were held for an average 8 years. Today, that average is under 6 months. Everything's moving faster. And so, do we need to even move faster than those numbers? Do we have to get that down to 10 hours per 1 hour of instruction?
To the sacrifice
because the business
of
is
what,
moving
though?
Well, that's just it. I mean, doing that makes our material turn into fast food, and there's a place for fast food in the world. And I guess it depends on the type of organization, if that's what they want. How much money are they willing to spend and invest in their people? Now, of course, the cycle time of business, that certainly changes it. So you have to have, I think, less complex solution, less polished material sometimes than you'd like to present. But I think sometimes than you'd like to present. But I think, I don't know if it's a slippery slope, but I feel like you're probably right. I think that's an accurate assessment, that there's a business need to make things move faster. Sure. As is always the case. But, I really want to push against that, because the concern is then everything just turns into a cardboard cutout of a clown with red hair, and nobody wants that.
And I guess my thing too is, what are the long-term impacts? Because you kind of look at, and because this is how society and culture can be, diet, the fast, quick hit diet. Take this pill and you're going to lose weight, 20 pounds in a month if you do this or you do this.
Really?
But the long term, whatever,
pill.
I don't know the numbers. But because people want to lose weight or things, so they give them this big pill, or whatever, they lose all this weight. But because they did it so fast, or because they didn't make a true lifestyle change or a lasting effect, they wind up getting worse health diseases or worse health physically, or they just wind up gaining all the weight back again. And it's
at least all the way back.
At least all the way
my
back.
experience.
But I think, let me tie this back to the article I was reading, and then tie it back into those numbers. And I think,
which article?
Well, the article I didn't share with you guys, talking about buy versus there. What he was talking about is the speed of business, right? And he basically, I thought these two things kind of, to put in perspective, and I'm curious on the impact of L&D, is he was talking about it took decades for the telephone, right, to reach 50% of U.S. households.
Yep.
In 5 years, it took to achieve the same penetration with mobile phones. And one more thing here. In 1958, the average company in the L&D professionals and say, we're not going to be able to do it because it's not going to be correct, or we're not going to be able to build it. I'm almost leaning to the point of, we don't have a choice, because business is moving so fast. And I know it's a slippery slope and a race to the bottom, but how, as learning professionals, can we keep up with that type of change in business? Because if we don't, we're not going to be able to say, hey, it's going to take us 6 months to get something out. Well, in 6 months, the business is going to change.
Well, then you need to brush up on your Asian languages, because you're going to be shopping that shit offshore, no problem. Mm-hmm. That's what's going to end up happening, right? That's what we always do when the business pushes hard, is you contract it out to wherever there's more bodies than there is money,
Mm-hmm. And it's almost one of those things where, is that where we're going for a lot of this development? If we have to get faster and faster, just even to keep up with the business.
Yeah.
We have to get faster and faster, just even to keep up with the business.
Yeah, I don't know, man. I feel like there might be a backswing. There's never... there's a lot of, at least from my perspective, a lot of fracturing of society, fracturing of culture, fracturing of all these different things. And there's an analogy that I think is apt that I think I heard Malcolm Gladwell talk about one time, and it was about mustard. And the idea was if you just have yellow mustard, French's mustard on the shelf, maybe 40% people, and I'm gonna make the numbers up, but the point's the same. So let's say 40% of people are down with mustard. Okay, great. So there's your mustard market. You got 40%. But if you can get 30% that like Dijon and 30% that like honey mustard, well, now all of a sudden your mustard market, and I think that's probably what you're going to see. So you're going to see some portions of business that are, driven by Wall Street, that are Wall Street banking, all that sort of stuff that needs to go quicker, faster all the time. And that's where you're going to see the global connections. But then you're going to have those smaller entities that maybe they're a small group of franchised businesses. Maybe it's a small parts shop that has like a regional representation, those smaller groups where maybe they go the other way. I don't know. I'm hopeful that it's not going to be a blanket change. And I think just the way that society is going, that it won't be. So I think there's going to be the ability to pick your flavor of the sort of organization that you want to support.
Mm-hmm. That's a great point. I like mustard.
Thank you. Yeah, well, who doesn't like mustard? And it's paleo compliant.
What's interesting?
Speaking of diets.
And not talk about mustard, but let's talk about another favorite subject of mine is beer. Let's talk about another favorite subject of mine is beer. It was kind of interesting. I was reading this article about there's a lot of craft beer companies doubling down and making craft non-alcoholic beer. And that was a big thing in a lot of these craft companies. That's one of their niches. And in 2020, they're expecting a lot of the big players to get into the non-alcoholic craft beer and kind of do that race to the bottom of, Anheuser-Busch is coming in, Coors is coming in, and they're going to jump on it just like they're doing with seltzer, right? And and then there's the craft guys that are doing it. Hey, we're going to do it this way, and we're going to, really do it the full way and kind of really look at it that way.
I don't know if I understand non-alcoholic beer. I really don't get it.
I don't either.
There's not a single... This goes back to the conversation that we had about getting a pretend meat alcoholic beer.
Yeah. So do you think...
Okay.
All right, so go back to the topic at hand. How long, if you averaged out, and I'm talking from initial analysis...
This feels like a one-on-one. I'm uncomfortable all of a sudden.
I have to do one of them. Gibbs keeps not going to mine. And at the end of the day,
you should serve more non-alcoholic beer.
Let's say it's a medium topic, not too in depth, but you have to have a SME. They have to walk you through it. How long do you think it takes you to make a instructor-led training on a system?
For how long? Hours?
1 hour.
That's it.
1 hour.
That's it. 1 hour system training. It's an ILT?
ILT.
Well, funny you should mention. That's kind of what I'm working on this week upcoming, and I have no longer than a week to do it. So, about a week. No, I think if it's not too complicated, it's an ILT and it's system-based training. I think a week. So here's the thing, and here's the qualifier that goes along with all of these numbers. Is it's not the actual work that goes into it. I mean, these are all good numbers. I'm sure they're sound and they look like they're well founded, but it's the pacing between the engagements with the SME and getting on their calendar, and that can take a week of development time and stress. I'm sure they're sound and they look like they're well founded, but it's the pacing between the engagements with the SME and getting on their calendar. And that can take a week of development time and stretch it across 2.5 months, like that's the part that I think never really gets fairly represented here. Not that you can really account for that in any sort of quantitative way, but I think to develop, if you have access to the people that you need to have access to, and access to the system that you need, the various user accounts that you need to do it, and the files or setups that you need to do it, I think it's not unreasonable to say within a week, as long as you can walk you through it, you practice, you plan. I think that's sensible.
That's the only thing you're working on. during
Yeah,
those
well,
four,
exactly.
that
That's
week.
what I'm saying. I mean, that's just like the SME accessibility. That's what I'm saying. I mean, that's just like the SME accessibility. Like, if you've got 4 massive projects, well, now you can take that, multiply it by 4. The SME has 13 massive projects, so now you're taking it, and it just keeps stretching out and stretching out. But when it boil it down, this is maybe all that's at the bottom of the pot.
Right. So about one. So you're saying a little bit above the ATD average. Which about
what did they say?
I think they said 1 to
22?
29 hours.
1 to 29.
Yeah, 1 to 29.
Well, I take
so
lunch.
you're say 1 to
You throw a
35.
couple lunches in there.
Yeah, that's why I said
what
1 to 35 with a couple lunches,
Coffee
a little
breaks.
water
Like
break, coffee.
dedicated
I gotta go upstairs to
time.
use the restroom now.
Get some
so,
Baileys. Oh,
Yeah.
never mind.
Baileys.
In the coffee.
Non-alcoholic
time.
Baileys.
But I think it's just a very interesting topic, and I'm really curious about what these numbers continue to go towards, because I know with a lot of companies, and I've talked to other friends, it's doing.
We move so fast. People are having heart attacks at younger ages. People are going on stress leave, high blood pressure.
Well, okay.
Because
Then they should turn their goddamn phones off, because that's half the problem. And try eating a vegetable.
I'm not even going to go
solved
there,
all
Dad.
the problems of, and don't drink
Just saying.
non-alcoholic beer.
Oh, that's ridiculous. Yeah, you drink the alcoholic beer.
Yeah, so it'll be just one of those interesting things as it keeps going. And I know next week I already kind of sent you guys a topic, but talking about training of the future, ATD just released the new competency model, and I'm looking forward to diving into that because it's about 23 competencies, about 150 skill descriptions throughout this model. So really
That
looking
sounds like
forward
we
to
might
that.
have to do a special edition just focused on that.
I actually think that would be a good one to do live next week. So
Provided the technology
good one to do live next week. So
provided the technology works. Well, so here's the thing. If that works out, that means people are going to hear this if they listen to it as soon as it's available, and then like 36 hours later, we're going to be doing a live thing. So we'll have to fine tune that. But you may very well find us live. And if you want to satiate Adam's curiosity about how long it takes you to complete 1 hour of ILT medium complexity training, let us know at mosbylearning@gmail.com. And as you heard, Adam checks that on a regular basis, and he will let us know as soon as that email comes in. So please do that. You can find the show notes for this episode at mosby.ca/018. Please take a few minutes. Check out the show notes. We always annotate them, give you guys all the links here, and we let you know when we talk about certain things and all sorts of stuff. So please check that out. There's no underscores, there's no spaces.
just at Mosby Learning.
At Mosby. It's beautiful.
Yes, it's
It's
clean.
almost too beautiful.
It's very clean. Yeah.
It's possibly the best part of this whole podcast, our Twitter handle. Adam, where do you want folks to get a hold of you, should they be so
LinkedIn,
inclined?
just Adam Costakes, and that's a LinkedIn profile. Or Adam Costakes at Gmail. That works too. I'm pretty easy to
there you
find.
go. Putting it out there. All right,
Yeah.
Gibbs, how about yourself? Where do you want people to find you?
Cynthia Gibbs, LinkedIn.
LinkedIn.
With
You didn't
my-
do your regular LinkedIn jingle.
Oh, sorry. 13,000 connections.
The false. All right, cool.
I don't believe it.
You can find me on LinkedIn. You can find me on Instagram, Dan Talks Training, and then on Twitter it's Dan Talks LND. N as in Nancy. So check us out there. Music for this episode, as always, provided by Kevin MacLeod from Incompetech.com. He's got some dandy music.
Thank you, Kevin.
And for this episode, as always, provided by Kevin MacLeod from Incompetech.com. He's got some dandy
Thank
music.
you, Kevin.
And what's that?
Said music
It was
always
a thank you to
provided by
Kevin. It was a
MacLeod.
thank you to Kevin MacLeod.
Oh, maybe we got to get a jingle for Kevin. Yeah, that's what we got to do. But he's got a lot of good music out there. And you know what he doesn't have? A Twitter handle. I've looked. He's not there. You know who does? Mosby learning. So please check us out there. See our tweets. See the things we say. Oh, you can find me on YouTube too, where we post the episodes here. And on YouTube, I also try to section out the smaller pieces that might be just like a small contained unit, like Can Training Fix It? I feel as though that's going to end up as a Mosby moment. We'll see though. So thank you guys so much for spending the last hour with us, and we'll talk to you next week. Bye-bye. Thank you.
Thank you, Kevin.